Commander Jake Harrison stood at the bridge of the Aurora's Dream, watching the stars through the main screen. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't notice. The message they received 2 days ago still played in his mind over, and OVR Dr. Lisa Martinez walked up to him. Her face looked tired and worried. She held a data pad in her hands that shook slightly. "Jake, I finished translating the last part of the message. You need to see this right away." Jake took the pad and read the words that would change everything. The Galactic Council's final transmission was clear and terrible. An ancient enemy called the Void Singers had woken up after sleeping for 1,000,000 years. This thing ate the thoughts and dreams of smart creatures. It made itself stronger by consuming entire worlds full of thinking beings. "How many galaxies? Has it already destroyed?" Jake asked. 17, Lisa said quietly, "and now it's coming here." Jake felt his stomach drop. The message explained that every smart race in the galaxy had made the same choice. The Keepers of Andros, who had lived for thousands of years. The Nexari, whose technology was like magic to humans. The Peaceful Harmony Collective, all of them were leaving. They would run to the far edge of space, to small galaxies called the Magellanic Clouds, call the senior staff, Jake said. "Emergency meeting in 10 minutes. Soon the small conference room filled with his best people. Chief Engineer Ryan Torres looked confused. Communications Officer Amy Walsh seemed scared. Security Chief Carl Johnson sat with his arms crossed, ready for a fight even though he didn't know what they were fighting yet. Jake put the data pad on the table. "Earth got the same message we did. Every government on our planet is preparing to leave. The Council gave us coordinates to a safe place where we can start over." "Start over?" Ryan asked. "What about Earth? What about our home?" "According to this, if we stay, we die," Jake said. "This Void Singer thing has never lost a fight. It eats entire civilizations for breakfast," Amy spoke up. "The message says we have 3 months before it gets to our solar system. Most of the galaxy is already packing up to leave." Carl slammed his hand on the table. "So we just run? We abandon everything we built?" "That's what every other smart race is doing," Jake said. "They've been around a lot longer than us. They know more about this enemy than we do." Lisa had been quiet, but now she looked up from her computer. "I found something strange in the data. Every time this Void Singer attacked before, the races that ran away never came back home. Not once." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "I mean they became homeless forever," Lisa said. "Something about how this creature feeds changes the galaxy. Makes it so complex life can't exist here anymore. The refugees never returned to their worlds. The room went silent." Jake felt a cold fear in his chest. Running away was an escape. It was giving up their home forever. Ryan stared at his hands. "My family has lived on Earth for generations. My kids were born there, and we're supposed to just leave and never see it again?" "The alternative is death," Amy said. "At least if we run, we stay alive, do we?" Carl asked. "What kind of life is it if we spend forever running from place to place, never having a real home?" Jake stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, the stars looked peaceful and normal, but somewhere out there, something was coming that had destroyed 17 entire galaxies full of life. "There's something else," Lisa said. She pulled up new data on her screen. "Our deep space station on the moon detected some weird energy readings near Jupiter. They thought it was just background radiation at first." "What kind of energy?" Jake asked. "The same kind the Void Singers give off," Lisa said. "It's very faint, but it's there, and it's been there for weeks." The room fell silent again. Jake felt his blood turn cold. "You're saying they're already here?" Carl asked. "I'm saying they might be hiding, waiting for everyone to leave," Lisa said. "Think about it. Why attack when you have to fight millions of ships and weapons? Why not wait until the galaxy is empty and then feed without any resistance?" Jake looked at each of his crew members. These were good people, smart people. People who had families back on Earth and dreams for the future. "The Council message said we have to choose now," Jake said. "Earth's government is loading the Exodus ships. In 2 days, the first wave of our people will leave for the Magellanic Clouds. And if we stay? Ryan asked. Then we face something that has eaten entire galaxies, Jake said. Something that every other smart race in the galaxy is afraid of. Amy looked at her hands. My sister has 3 kids. They're supposed to be on the second wave of ships. If I stay here and we're wrong, they grow up without ever seeing their aunt again? If we run and I'm right about the energy readings, then we're just delaying the inevitable, Lisa said. This thing will hunt down every refugee ship eventually. At least here we have a chance to make a stand. Carl stood up. I've been a soldier my whole life. Sometimes you have to fight even when you know you'll probably lose. Sometimes that's the only choice that lets you keep your honor. Jake picked up the datapad and looked at the coordinates for the refugee zone. Millions of light years from Earth, far from everything they had ever known or loved. I need to think about this, Jake said. We all do. This isn't just about us. This is about the future of the human race. As his crew left the meeting room, Jake stayed behind. He thought about his own family back on Earth, his parents who were too old to travel to the stars, his brother who had just started a new job, his nephew who was only 5 years old and loved to hear stories about space adventures. The choice was simple and terrible. Run away and live as refugees forever, or stay and fight something that had never been defeated. Outside the window, the stars kept shining like they always had. But now Jake knew that most of them would soon be empty and cold, abandoned by the creatures who had once called them home. The Aurora's dream continued its journey through space, carrying the weight of an impossible decision. Captain Susan Blake had never seen the Earth Council chamber so full of angry voices. Representatives from every country on the planet sat in the huge room that floated in space above Earth. Through the big windows, she could see the blue and green world below, peaceful and beautiful. It was hard to believe that in a few weeks it might be empty forever. We need to vote now, shouted Senator Richard Palmer from the main podium. He was the leader of the group that wanted to leave Earth. Every minute we waste arguing is a minute. Closer to disaster, the Exodus ships are ready. The coordinates are locked in. We can save our people if we move today. Captain Blake stood up from her seat. Senator Palmer, you're asking us to abandon our home based on fear. Yes, this Voidsinger creature is dangerous. But running away isn't the only choice we have. Palmer looked at her like she was crazy. Captain, this thing has destroyed 17 galaxies. 17. Civilizations that were millions of years older than us couldn't stop it. What makes you think we can? Dr. Nathan Cross, who sat next to Blake, opened his laptop computer. Because we found something the other civilizations didn't know about, he said. His voice was quiet, but everyone in the room could hear him. What are you talking about? Palmer asked. Blake nodded to Dr. Cross, who pressed a button on his computer. The big screen at the front of the room showed pictures from deep space. 3 days ago, Lieutenant Commander Steve Rogers and his team found something in the Kuiper Belt. Show them, Nathan. The pictures changed to show pieces of broken metal floating in space. But these weren't pieces from any human ship or any alien ship they knew about. The metal was black and covered with strange symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them. This wreckage is very old, Dr. Cross said. Older than any civilization we know about. And look at this. The picture zoomed in on scorch marks on the metal. These aren't weapon marks from normal guns or lasers. These marks were made by something that hurt the Void Singers. The room went quiet. Colonel Maria Santos, who ran Earth's military planning, stood up. Are you saying someone actually fought these things and won? Not exactly won, Dr. Cross said, but they hurt them badly. Badly enough to make the Void Singers sleep for 1,000,000 years. The energy readings from this wreckage match the signatures we're getting from the approaching enemy. Someone found a way to wound them. Palmer shook his head. Even if that's true, where are these mystery defenders now? If they could hurt the Void Singers, why aren't they here to help us? That's what we're trying to figure out, Blake said. But the important thing is that it proves the Void Singers can be hurt. They're not invincible. A woman from the Asian Federation raised her hand. Captain Blake, even if you're right, we're still talking about going to war with something that eats galaxies. Our weapons can barely scratch the paint on a Nexari scout ship. How do we fight something like this? Dr. Cross clicked to another slide. The weapon marks on the wreckage aren't from any technology we understand. The energy signatures are biological, not mechanical. Whatever hurt the Void Singers came from living creatures, not machines. Living creatures? Palmer asked. What does that mean? We think it means consciousness itself was used as a weapon, Dr. Cross said. The defenders somehow turned their own thoughts and minds into something that could hurt the enemy. Blake could see that half the room thought Dr. Cross was talking nonsense. But the other half looked interested and maybe a little hopeful. That's impossible, Palmer said. You can't fight with thoughts? You need guns and bombs and ships? Colonel Santos stepped forward. Actually, it makes sense in a weird way. The reports say the Void Singers feed on consciousness. They eat the thoughts and dreams of smart creatures. Maybe consciousness is the only thing that can hurt them back. An alarm sound filled the chamber. Amy Walsh, who was monitoring communications from the Aurora's dream, spoke over the intercom. Captain Blake, we're getting reports from the outer system. The first wave of galactic refugee ships is launching. The Keepers of Andros just left their homeworld. Blake felt her heart sink. The Keepers had been humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. They had taught humans about faster-than-light travel and shared their knowledge freely. Now, they were running away without even saying goodbye. The Nexari ships are powering up too, Amy continued. Long-range sensors show massive energy signatures moving away from their core worlds. It looks like everyone is really leaving. Palmer smiled grimly. You see, the smartest races in the galaxy are getting out. They know something we don't. They've studied this enemy longer than we have. If they say running is the only option, then running is the only option. But Blake had made up her mind. She looked around the room at all the frightened faces. These were leaders from every nation on Earth. They had families and children and hopes for the future. They were scared, and they had every right to be scared. I understand the fear, Blake said. I have a daughter back on Earth. She's only 8 years old. The idea of her growing up in some refugee camp light years from home makes me sick to my stomach. Then vote for the Exodus, Palmer said. Save your daughter's life. But what if running doesn't save her? Blake asked. What if Dr. Cross is right and the Void Singers are already here waiting for us to leave? What if abandoning Earth just makes us easier targets? The room buzzed with quiet conversations. Blake could see that people were starting to think about what she said. Dr. Cross spoke up again. There's something else. The energy readings from Jupiter aren't random. They're following a pattern. The Void Singers aren't just hiding out there. They're studying us. Learning about human consciousness before they attack. Studying us how? Someone asked. They're reading our communications, our entertainment broadcasts, our internet traffic, Dr. Cross said. They're learning how human minds work. And based on the data patterns, I think they're confused. Confused about what? Blake asked. About us, Dr. Cross said. Human consciousness is different from other species. We're more chaotic, more emotional, more unpredictable. The other galactic races think in very logical, ordered ways. But humans think with their hearts as much as their heads. Colonel Santos looked interested. Are you saying that might be an advantage? I'm saying it might be why the ancient defenders were able to hurt the Void Singers, Dr. Cross said. Maybe ordered, logical thought is easier for them to digest. Maybe chaos and emotion are harder for them to handle. Palmer stood up and pounded his fist on the podium. This is all speculation. You're asking us to bet the entire human race on maybe and might be. We have a sure path to safety, and you want us to ignore it for wild theories. Blake looked at the screen showing the ancient wreckage. Someone had made a stand 1,000,000 years ago. They had fought back against impossible odds and somehow hurt an enemy that devoured galaxies. They had probably died in the attempt, but they had shown that the Void Singers could bleed. I call for a vote, Blake said. All in favor of evacuating Earth and joining the galactic exodus? Hands went up around the room. Blake counted them carefully. It was close, but Palmer had the majority. All opposed, Blake said. More hands went up. Blake counted again and felt her heart race. It was closer than she thought. The measure fails by 3 votes, Blake announced. Earth will not evacuate. Palmer's face turned red. You're all insane. You're going to get everyone killed. Maybe, Blake said. But we're going to die as humans defending our home, not as refugees running from it. As the chamber erupted in arguments and shouting, Blake looked out the window at Earth again. In a few weeks, they would find out if standing and fighting was courage or stupidity, but at least they would find out together. Admiral Peter Collins had never seen Earth's space station so busy. Every shipyard around the planet worked day and night, turning peaceful cargo ships into weapons of war. Welders worked in zero gravity, attaching armor plates and weapon systems to vessels that had never been meant for fighting. The constant sound of construction hammers and plasma cutters filled the space around Earth. Admiral, the civilian transport Blue Horizon is ready for combat conversion, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the engineering station. But I have to tell you, sir, putting weapons on a passenger ship doesn't make it a warship. Admiral Collins nodded grimly. I know, Lieutenant, but it's what we have. Every ship that can fly needs to be ready to fight. In a laboratory on Mars, Dr. Nathan Cross worked with a team of scientists on the most important project in human history. They had been studying the ancient wreckage for weeks, trying to understand how consciousness could be turned into a weapon. The energy patterns don't make sense, said computer specialist Danny Foster, staring at his screen full of numbers and graphs. According to our instruments, the weapon signatures show biological brain activity, but amplified 1,000 times. Beyond what any living creature should be able to produce. Dr. Cross rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working for 18 hours straight. What if it's not one brain, but many working together? The ancient defenders might have linked their minds somehow. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, who had been transferred to help with the research, looked up from her test equipment. I've been running simulations based on human brain patterns. If we could connect multiple human minds and focus their thoughts in the same direction, the energy output would be enormous. Enormous enough to hurt the Void Singers? Dr. Cross asked. Maybe, Sarah said, but there's a problem. The feedback from this kind of mental linking would probably kill anyone who tried it. Dr. Cross felt his stomach drop. The ancient defenders had found a way to wound the enemy, but it had cost them their lives. Now humanity faced the same terrible choice. Meanwhile, Captain Susan Blake led a dangerous mission to the edge of the solar system. Her ship, the Defender, crept slowly toward Jupiter, where the strange energy readings were strongest. With her were pilot Jack Murphy and xenobiologist Dr. Helen Park, who specialized in studying alien minds. We're picking up massive psychic activity near Jupiter's moons, Dr. Park said, monitoring her sensitive equipment. Whatever's out there, it's thinking very hard about something. Jack Murphy kept the ship's engines at minimum power to avoid detection. Captain, are we sure we want to get closer to something that eats thoughts for breakfast? We need to know what we're fighting, Blake said. The fleet back at Earth is preparing for war, but we still don't understand the enemy. As they approached Jupiter, Dr. Park's equipment began picking up strange signals, not radio waves or normal communications, but something that seemed to speak directly to the mind. I'm getting psychic transmissions, Dr. Park said, her voice shaking slightly. It's like hearing voices in my head, but the voices are speaking in languages that don't exist. Can you understand any of it? Blake asked. Dr. Park closed her eyes and concentrated. It's not one voice. It's thousands, maybe millions of voices, all talking at once. They're arguing about something. And they're scared? Scared? Jack asked. What do galaxy-eating monsters have to be scared of? Dr. Park's eyes snapped open. Us. They're scared of us. Blake felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? The voices, they're not all void singers, Dr. Park said. Most of them are the absorbed minds of creatures the enemy has eaten. And they're talking about humans. They're saying we're different. Dangerous. Dangerous how? Blake asked. Dr. Park listened for a few more minutes, then turned pale. They're saying human minds are chaotic and unpredictable. When the Void Singers tried to probe our thoughts from a distance, it gave them what they call mental indigestion. Our consciousness is too messy for them to digest easily. Blake realized what this meant. So they're studying us, trying to figure out how to eat human minds without getting sick. That's not the worst part, Dr. Park said. The absorbed voices are saying that every time the Void Singers consume a chaotic mind like ours, it weakens their collective consciousness. That's why they're afraid we might be poisonous to them. Back on Mars, Dr. Cross made a breakthrough that changed everything. Working with Sarah Kim, he discovered that the ancient weapon signatures weren't just from linked minds working together. They were from minds that had been absorbed by the Void Singers but had somehow fought back from the inside. The ancient defenders didn't just attack the enemy, Dr. Cross explained to Admiral Collins over a video call. They let themselves be absorbed on purpose, then caused a rebellion within the Void Singer collective consciousness. You're saying they committed suicide to poison the enemy? Admiral Collins asked. Not exactly, Dr. Cross said. More like they sacrificed themselves to plant a virus in the enemy's mind. The absorbed defenders have been fighting from within the collective for 1,000,000 years, weakening it slowly. Sarah Kim pulled up a new set of data. And here's the amazing part. The ancient minds are still in there, still fighting. They've been waiting for something to tip the balance in their favor. Something like what? Admiral Collins asked. Something like a few million chaotic human minds joining the fight. Dr. Cross said. Captain Blake's mission took a dangerous turn when her ship was detected by a Void Singer scout vessel. The enemy ship was enormous, bigger than Earth's largest space station, and it moved through space like a living thing rather than a machine. It's scanning us, Dr. Park said, watching her instruments with growing alarm. I can feel it trying to read our minds. Jack Murphy's hands shook on the controls. Captain, whatever this thing is doing, it's making me feel sick, like something's crawling around inside my head. Blake gritted her teeth against the same nauseating sensation. Helen, what's happening? It's trying to taste our thoughts, Dr. Park said. But it's having trouble. Human consciousness is too scrambled for it to get a clean reading. The Void Singer ship suddenly pulled back, as if it had touched something hot. Dr. Park's equipment showed a massive spike in psychic activity, followed by what could only be described as alien confusion. It's calling for help, Dr. Park said. Listening to the psychic transmissions. The absorbed voices are laughing. They're saying the scout ship got burned trying to read us. Blake made a command decision. Jack, get us out of here. Full speed back to Earth. As the Defender raced away from Jupiter, Blake realized that humanity had stumbled onto something incredible. They weren't just another species for the Void Singers to consume. They were a threat the enemy had never encountered before. Helen, can you contact the absorbed minds directly? Blake asked. Dr. Park nodded slowly. I think so. They seem to want to talk to us, then open a channel. It's time we introduced ourselves to our new allies. As Earth prepared for the greatest battle in human history, Captain Blake made contact with the ancient defenders trapped inside the enemy's collective mind. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the absorbed consciousness of the galaxy's first victims had found something worth hoping for. The Void Singers had made a mistake. They had come to Earth expecting an easy meal, but instead they had found an entire species of mental chaos that could fight back from the inside. The real war was about to begin. And it would be fought not with ships and weapons, but with the power of human stubbornness and the refusal to give up, even when trapped inside the mind of a cosmic predator. The Void Singers came like a storm made of living darkness. Commander Tony Mitchell watched from his command ship as massive shadow vessels appeared near Mars. Each enemy ship was larger than Earth's moon, and they moved through space in ways that hurt to look at. The ships seemed to bend reality around them, making the stars twist and the empty space ripple like water. All ships, this is Admiral Collins, came the voice over the radio. Remember, our job is to buy time for the special mission. Every minute. We hold them here as another minute for Captain Blake's team to reach the mothership. Tony gripped his chair as his ship shook from the enemy's first attack. But this wasn't like any weapon he had ever seen. The Void Singer beams didn't just damage the hull of his ship. They reached inside and tried to grab the thoughts of his crew. "Sir, Lieutenant Johnson just collapsed at his station," reported his second-in-command. "He's still breathing, but his eyes are empty. It's like nobody's home inside his head." Tony felt sick. The enemy wasn't just destroying ships. They were eating the minds of anyone they hit. Across the human fleet, entire crews were falling into comas as their consciousness was sucked away to feed the hungry collective dot. But then something unexpected happened. Dr. Cross's experimental weapon fired for the first time. The device was mounted on a converted mining ship called the Last Hope, volunteer pilot Lavra. Thompson sat connected to the machine by dozens of wires attached to her head. "Firing psychic resonance weapon," Lavra said into her radio. Her voice sounded strained and tired, focusing all mental energy on target. A beam of pure thought shot from the Last Hope toward the nearest Void Singer ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the enemy vessel shuddered and pulled back like it had been slapped. "Direct hit," Lavra reported. "The target is damaged, but the feedback is, oh God, it hurts so much." Laura's vital signs went flat on the medical monitors. She had burned out her own mind to power the weapon, but her sacrifice had proven something important. Humans could fight back. "All ships with resonance weapons, you are cleared to fire," Admiral Collins ordered. "Volunteers only, no one is ordered to use these weapons." Across the human fleet, brave men and women stepped forward to operate the deadly devices. Each shot damaged the enemy ships, but each shot also cost the operator their sanity or their life. The human fleet was literally using their cruise mines as ammunition. Commander Tony Mitchell watched pilot after pilot sacrifice themselves to power the psychic weapons. It was horrible and beautiful at the same time. No other species in the galaxy would have made such a trade. But humans had always been willing to pay any price to protect their home. "Sir, we're getting strange readings from the enemy ships," reported his science officer. "After each hit from our psychic weapons, their coordination gets worse. It's like we're making them confused." Tony realized what was happening. Every human mind the Void Singers absorbed was like putting poison into their collective consciousness. Human thoughts were too chaotic and emotional for the enemy to digest properly. Each absorbed human was weakening the entire collective from the inside. Meanwhile, Captain Blake's ship approached the massive Void Singer mothership. The vessel was so large that it had its own gravity field. Looking at it was like staring into a living nightmare. The surface writhed and shifted, covered with what looked like eyes and mouths from 1,000 different species. "I can hear them," said Dr. Helen Park, monitoring the psychic transmissions. "Millions of voices all screaming and crying at once, but some of them are trying to help us. The ancient defenders are giving us directions to the ship's core." Pilot Jack Murphy tried to keep his hands steady on the controls. Flying this close to the mothership felt like swimming through thick, evil-tasting soup. "Captain, the ship's systems are acting weird. It's like the enemy vessel is trying to hypnotize our computers." "Stay focused," Blake ordered. "Helen, can you contact the absorbed minds directly?" Dr. Park closed her eyes and reached out with her thoughts. Immediately, she made contact with something that called itself the First Who Said No. The ancient consciousness had been trapped inside the Void Singer collective for 1,000,000 years, fighting a lonely war against the hunger that had consumed. "It's people, they're showing me the way," Dr. Park said. "The core is deep inside the ship, but there are defenses. We'll have to abandon our ship and go in on foot." Blake looked at her small team. Dr. Cross carried the most powerful psychic weapon ever built by humans. It was designed not to destroy the enemy, but to amplify human consciousness and broadcast it directly into the Void Singer collective. The plan was insane, but it might work. "Remember, this isn't about killing them," Blake said as they prepared to leave their ship. "It's about reminding them what they used to be before they became parasites." The team entered the mothership through a wound caused by the fleet's psychic weapons. Inside, the quarters shifted and changed like a living maze. The walls whispered with the voices of every species the Void Singers had ever consumed. Walking through the ship was like traveling through the nightmare. Memories of an entire galaxy. Dr. Cross struggled to carry his heavy equipment while fighting off the psychic pressure that tried to crush his mind. The absorbed consciousness are helping us, he gasped. They're hiding our thoughts from the collective, but they can't do it for long. As they moved deeper into the ship, Blake began to understand the true horror of what the Void Singers had become. This wasn't just a predator that ate other creatures. It was a collective of every intelligent species it had ever consumed, all trapped together in an endless cycle of hunger and despair. Helen, are you still in contact with the ancient defenders? Blake asked. Dr. Park nodded, but blood was running from her nose. The strain of communicating with the absorbed minds was taking its toll. They're telling me about the core. It's not a machine or a computer. It's the original consciousness that started this whole nightmare. If we can reach it and show it what it's become, we might be able to break the cycle. Jack Murphy suddenly stopped walking. Captain, I'm picking up movement ahead. Something big is coming this way. Around the corner came something that made all of them want to scream. It was a creature made from parts of every species the Void Singers had absorbed. Tentacles from deep-sea aliens, claws from predatory races, eyes from creatures that saw, in dimensions humans couldn't imagine. It was the collective's attempt to create a perfect predator. It's trying to scare us, Blake said, raising her weapon even though she knew bullets wouldn't work against something made of pure thought. Don't let it get into your head. Dr. Cross activated his psychic amplifier. I'm broadcasting human. Memories at it, memories of courage, love, and hope. Things the collective has forgotten how to feel. The creature stumbled and began to change shape. The absorbed minds were fighting back, using Dr. Cross's broadcast to remember what they had lost. For a moment, the monster looked less like a nightmare and more like the gentle beings it had once been. It's working, Dr. Park said. The absorbed consciousness are breaking free, one by one. But we need to reach the core before the collective realizes what we're doing. Blake led her team deeper into the ship, knowing that with each step, they were walking closer to either humanity's greatest victory or their final defeat. Behind them, the human fleet continued to sacrifice their minds to buy them time. The real battle wasn't being fought with guns and explosions. It was being fought with memories, emotions, and the stubborn human refusal to give up hope even when trapped inside the belly of the beast. Captain Blake's team reached the heart of the Void Singer mothership, and what they found there was beyond anything they had imagined. The core chamber was vast and filled with a swirling mass of light and shadow that pulsed like a giant heart. Inside the light, Blake could see the shapes of countless creatures, all the minds that had been absorbed over millions of years. This is it, Dr. Helen Park whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. This is where it all started. The original consciousness that became the first Void Singer. Dr. Nathan Cross set up his psychic amplifier in the center of the chamber. The device hummed with power, ready to broadcast human consciousness directly into the collective mind. According to the absorbed defenders, this original being wasn't always evil. It was curious, wanting to learn about other forms of life. But somewhere along the way, curiosity became hunger. Jack Murphy kept watch at the entrance while Blake approached the swirling mass of consciousness. As she got closer, she could hear voices speaking in languages that had been dead for millions of years. Some voices were angry, some were sad, but all of them were trapped. Can you hear me? Blake called out to the original consciousness. We've come to talk, not to fight. The swirling light suddenly focused on her, and Blake felt a presence touch her mind. It was old beyond measure, filled with the knowledge of entire galaxies, but also desperately lonely and confused. Who dares to enter the collective? The voice spoke directly into Blake's thoughts. What new knowledge do you bring to feed our hunger? We don't bring knowledge to be consumed, Blake said. We bring memories to be shared. We want to show you what you've forgotten." The presence laughed, but it was a sad sound. Forgotten, we forget nothing. Every mind we absorb becomes part of us forever. We know the thoughts of trillions of beings. Dr. Cross activated his amplifier, and suddenly the chamber filled with human memories. Not the complex thoughts of scientists or philosophers, but simple moments that made life worth living. A child's laughter, a sunset over a quiet lake, friends sharing a meal, the warm feeling of coming home after a long journey. The original consciousness recoiled as if it had been burned. What is this? These thoughts are different, chaotic, painful. They're human, Blake said. And they're what you used to be before you started consuming other minds. Dr. Park established contact with the absorbed defenders, and their voices joined the broadcast. Ancient beings who had been trapped for 1,000,000 years began to remember what they had lost. They remembered love, joy, creativity, and the simple pleasure of existing without needing to consume others. "We were explorers once," said the voice of the first who said no, speaking through Dr. Park. "We traveled between stars to learn and share knowledge. We celebrated the diversity of life in the galaxy." The original consciousness began to change. The swirling mass of light became less chaotic, and Blake could see the shape of what it had once been. A being of pure curiosity and wonder before the hunger had taken over. "I remember," the original voice whispered. "I remember the first world we visited, the first new form of life we encountered. We were so excited to learn from them. But then, when did learning become consuming? When did sharing become taking?" Blake stepped closer, despite the danger. "It doesn't matter when it started. What matters is that it can stop. You can choose to be something different." Outside the mothership, the battle between the human fleet and the Void Singer vessels had reached a turning point. As the absorbed minds began to break free from the collective, the enemy ships lost their coordination. Commander Tony Mitchell watched in amazement as several Void Singer vessels simply stopped fighting and began drifting through space. "Admiral Collins, this is Mitchell," he reported. "The enemy fleet is falling apart. Half their ships have gone? Dark and the others are moving randomly like they've lost contact with command." Admiral Collins felt a surge of hope. "Blake's mission is working. All ships, continue the attack, but be ready to cease fire on my order. We might not need to destroy them after all." Back in the core chamber, the transformation accelerated as more absorbed minds broke free from the collective hunger. The original consciousness was remembering what it had been before the corruption, but the process was painful and chaotic. "The hunger is fighting back," Dr. Cross warned, watching his instruments. "The parasitic part of the collective doesn't want to let go. It's trying to reassert control." Blake could feel the battle raging within the original consciousness. Millions of years of consumed minds were dividing into two groups: those who wanted to break free and return to their original nature, and those who had been so changed by the hunger that they couldn't imagine existing any other way. "You have to choose," Blake said to the original being. "You can stay as you are, consuming galaxy after galaxy until there's nothing left alive in the universe. Or you can remember what you used to be and become that again." The presence in Blake's mind was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke, with a voice full of ancient sadness. "To change means to give up the power we have gathered. It means releasing all the minds we have absorbed. Many of them have been with us so long that they might not survive as separate beings. Some might not," Blake admitted. "But at least they'll have the choice. Right now they're all prisoners," Dr. Park suddenly cried out in pain. "The collective is splitting apart. Some of the absorbed minds are choosing to stay with the hunger. They're trying to form a new collective." Blake realized that the victory might not be complete. Even if they convince the original consciousness to change, parts of the collective might break away and continue the cycle of consumption. "Then we need to make sure the hunger has nothing left to feed on," Blake said. She turned to Dr. Cross. "Can you modify the amplifier to broadcast a specific type of human memory?" "What kind of memory?" Dr. Cross asked. "The memory of choosing to sacrifice yourself for others," Blake said. Every human who died operating the psychic weapons made that choice. Show the collective what it means to give something up for the good of others. Dr. Cross adjusted his equipment, and the chamber filled with the memories of every human who had sacrificed their life or sanity to power the weapons that brought them this far. The memories were painful but beautiful, showing moment after moment of people choosing others' welfare over their own. The original consciousness was overwhelmed by the concept. In millions of years of consuming other minds, it had never encountered the idea of willing self-sacrifice for strangers. The hunger that had driven it for so long suddenly seemed small and meaningless compared to the courage shown by creatures it had considered inferior. "I understand now," the original voice said. "We became parasites because we were afraid of being alone. We consumed others to make ourselves feel less empty. But true connection doesn't come from taking, it comes from giving." The transformation began in earnest. The swirling mass of consciousness started separating into individual minds, each one free to choose its own path. Some chose to pass on to whatever comes after life. Others chose to return to their home galaxies as pure energy beings. A few chose to stay and help rebuild what had been destroyed. Blake felt the original consciousness, preparing to make its own choice. "What will you do now?" she asked. "I will spend whatever time I have left trying to undo the damage we caused," the being said. "I will help the absorbed minds find peace, and I will make sure the hunger never controls anyone again." As the collective dissolved, Blake's team prepared to leave the mothership. The vessel was coming apart as the consciousness that had held it together chose to transform into something new. "Captain, we need to go now," Jack Murphy urged. "The ship is breaking apart." But Blake had one more thing to do. She reached out, with her thoughts to contact the original being one last time. "Will we see you again?" "Perhaps," came the reply. "But if we meet again, it will be as friends, not as predator and prey. Thank you for reminding us what we used to be." As Blake's team escaped the dying mothership, they watched it transform into millions of points of light that spread across the galaxy. Each light was a freed consciousness, finally able to choose its own destiny after millions of years of imprisonment. The great battle was over, but Blake knew that the real work was just beginning. Humanity would need to reach out to the galactic species that had fled, letting them know it was safe to come home. They would need to help rebuild the civilizations that had been abandoned. Most importantly, they would need to prove that sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one brave enough to say what everyone else was afraid to think. The galaxy had walked away, but humanity had chosen to stand. Now it was time to help everyone else remember how to stand together.